Well, good afternoon and evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Harry Brailsford here with the weekly webinar. And what do you know? We snuck one more in before the end of 2015. Actually, we have an overwhelming crowd today. So I was just talking with our guest, Sean Cordner, who I'll introduce in a moment, that quite frankly, we're impressed and appreciate you taking time out of, maybe not so busy with business, but busy with your family. So we appreciate you taking a little time out to join us for what will be the last and final weekly webinar at SMB Nation for 2015. A little bit of housekeeping. Yes, our webpage was down for parts of late last week and over the weekend. It's a long story short, but we exceeded our capacity. That's why those of you that went to the web page, and I appreciate your text and emails and Facebook messages and your concern. You saw the MySQL error, and quite frankly, we just exceeded the capacity of the website and the service we have. So we migrated to a new hoster over the weekend. The website is up. We are still alive and kicking. So if you want to go to www.smbnation.com, you'll see there we are. And we are actually working on a revised website for early 2016. Check out our holiday greetings there and stay tuned for more announcements concerning 16 coming up shortly. The reason I'm going to just jump right into it is today we have a packed agenda, and it's a hot topic. So, Sean Cordner, without any further ado, sire, I'm going to just hand it over to you. I'm going to go on mute. I might interrupt you once on content, but let's rock. We got a full hour.
Awesome. Thanks, Harry. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Excuse me. I'm going to apologize in advance. I had a trip to lovely Denver this weekend, and I think I picked up a cold somewhere along the way, so my voice is a little hoarse, and I might have to clear it a few times. Anyway, thanks for joining us. I know it's going to be a slow week due to the holidays, as Harry mentioned, but if you're like me, this is an opportunity for you to spend a little time working on the business instead of in the business. That's probably what brings you to this webinar today. Throughout the rest of the year, you're pretty much forced to deal with the demands of being a managed service provider, and you're in a position where you have to choose between doing strategic work for the business and meeting the daily demands of your customers. So a great example of this is marketing. You intellectually know that you need to be devoting some time and resources to marketing, but for no other reason, you need to keep a sales funnel going, but often this is the first thing that's sacrificed when there's fires to be put out. So that's the purpose of this webinar, to provide you with a down and dirty but effective strategy that you can accomplish with a reasonable investment of time and effort. So we call that enterprise marketing on an SMB budget, and when we say enterprise marketing, we have three criteria for that. One, it has to have a cohesive strategy. Two, it leverages automation and follows current best practices. And three, when we say budget, it doesn't just mean the dollars that you spend, but it also means the time that you or your members of your team have to spend on the marketing. Your time is money, but as a business owner, sometimes your time has disproportionate value. So what we're going to show you today here will take a little bit of a time commitment from you and a little bit of effort, but most of the investment is happening on the front end, and you're going to be building a marketing engine that will pretty much run by itself beyond that. It's very efficient, and it's going to create value for your organization. One last note before we start here. What we're going to do is we're going to go through some simplified examples of how to do this and some simplified concepts. Any experienced marketer would easily come behind me and pick apart some of the things that I'm going to say. But getting you to start marketing is a little bit like doing an ice sculpture. We're going to cut away a lot of ice today with a chainsaw, and then we'll get down to doing the fine details with an ice pick a little bit later to come. So a little bit about us. We're a full-service digital marketing agency. We've got particular expertise in the partner sales channels in both telecom and IT. Our founders have a great deal of experience both in telecom and in IT, and specifically in the channel. And we've got a team of over 10 people now, and they've got a great deal of expertise in things like marketing and demand generation, design, and development. Our philosophy is that we take a data-driven approach to marketing and an innovative approach to design. So we believe in sharing what we know and knowing full well that the value is in how we execute. So what we're going to cover today, here's how the presentation is going to go. First is we're going to walk through a campaign workflow. So this workflow is your blueprint for building and running your marketing engine. And then we'll break down each step and provide you with definition and key concepts, best practices, common mistakes, and recommendations. Even if you don't intend to run this campaign as we designed it, you'll still come away with a number of actionable tips and best practices to leverage right away in your marketing efforts. So that's a whole lot of setup to get started, so let's dive right in. We have a lot to get to, so I'm going to speak kind of quickly. This will be available for you to download after the presentation, so you don't have to scribble notes furiously. So this is what the blueprint for the campaign that we think will help transform your business into a marketing engine looks like. Okay, so if you look at the center of this workflow here, it's your website. Your website is the hub of all this activity. The goal is that we want to increase traffic to your website. Think of it like a funnel. You know, fewer come out than go in, so we need to keep a lot of suspects going into the top of the funnel, and that's driving traffic to your website. We're going to talk about your website in more detail, how to make sure it's optimized to support this kind of effort. But your website is the foundation for all of your digital marketing efforts. And this is where you're going to spend the most time or budget making sure that you're in good shape. Once suspects are on your site, the content is what moves them through what we call a buyer's journey to become a marketing qualified lead. So they go in as a suspect, someone that we don't know, but they come out as a marketing qualified lead, somebody that's saying, yes, I want to hear more, I want to talk to you, I want to engage with your sales team. When we talk about content, it could be anything from white papers and ebooks to videos and infographics, but for the purposes of this campaign that we're talking about today, we mean blog posts. You're going to write and publish 2 blog posts per week. That's the minimum. You're going to promote them in 2 separate ways. One is your spotlight post. And I'm not sure if you can see my pointer there, but here's your spotlight post down here. And here's your spotlight promotion that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
So you're going to promote your 2 blog posts in 2 different ways. Sorry.
Sean, would you like me to talk about content now, or is there a better place to talk about content? Because I have a couple of thoughts about that kind of cadence, and whatever your pleasure.
Go ahead, Harry.
Okay, so folks, that's a hell of a lot of writing. Okay, but it's you know, and there's ways to overcome that, and you can use Odesk to have people help you with writing and so on. I'm not going to go into all that. That'd be, you know, maybe a follow-up conversation with Sean and team, but let's kind of talk about the cadence. Here's what I do is one of the reasons you're getting our newsletter is the Sunday paper, right? So we changed our newsletter from Tuesday to Sunday was exactly that, the cadence. Tuesday was a little burdensome in trying to run the day-to-day activities of our business. And I found myself being able to kind of write on, you know, like a Saturday or maybe an early Sunday morning when I could finally focus and write. And that's how it became the Sunday paper. And the good news is that we're getting great feedback. Everybody loves the Sunday paper, and they like the longer blogs. But that's not the point. The point is that's kind of how I write, because it is hard with sort of the ADD nature of business, you know, at 10:15 on a Tuesday morning. Sean, it's hard to sit down and write. I mean, you got a lot going on, and that's a big cadence. And then the other tip I would give is you can look around at other blogs and other conversations that are going on, and add your own opinion to that. So for example, to some extent, I did that with the blog you'll see on the SMB Nation webpage about analytics, SMB analytics. You'll see that I kind of cite 4 or 5 different conversations. Those are unique conversations I had, and I wrote those up. However, those could have been 4 or 5 blogs where I'm just doing a recap and maybe a link off to those other blogs on the topic of analytics. So, Sean, my advice is exactly worth what you just paid for it, sir.
Thanks, Harry. I think it's good advice. You know, as you'll see, content is kind of the cornerstone of this entire marketing effort, and really it's the direction that digital marketing is going in, period. And it's also very expensive. You know, you can expect to pay up to $1 a word, sometimes more if it's technical writing. So, you know, if you can be disciplined and you can carve out some time and get over the intimidation factor of putting something down on paper, you will have a lot of success, and you'll do it on a pretty reasonable budget. Okay, so back to the content. You're going to write and publish 2 posts per week. You're going to promote them in 2 separate ways. One post is your spotlight post, and the spotlight post should be thought leadership content. It's critical that this content, and really all of your content, not be positioned as a commercial for your company. People don't want that. People don't want you to blast them with your marketing message. They want real value, and so when you're writing this content, you need to think on the other side, if you were the customer, would you find value in this? It should be a piece of advice or commentary on something that's related to what you do or your core competencies as a business, but it should stand on its own without the company as a context for it. So, for example, you do want to write 4 things every disaster recovery plan needs, but you don't want to write 4 features of your disaster recovery as a service solution. That's an important distinction. The other post that you're going to do is the secondary post, we call it. This can be company news or events or vendor highlights or product news. It can also be a secondary thought leadership topic, but you still don't want this to be a blatant commercial for your services. Make the topics diverse. That's a good thing here, but they should still be related to your core competencies. Your Spotlight promotion will be a weekly email that features your Spotlight post. So one of the blog posts that you put out will be promoted over email. It'll also be promoted over social media and ads, and we'll talk a little more about ads, but this will be done over the social platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. They all have ad options right now. Your secondary post promotion is just going to be social media. So what we're going to do then is, if you follow the workflow, you're going to do your weekly Spotlight post. You're going to send an email out that says, hey, check out this awesome post that we just put up. Oops. And then you're going to promote it on social media and say, hey, check out this blog that we just put up. And you'll have some ads that will link back to it as well. When they click on the calls to action in the email, so read more about this post, for example, they'll come to your page. This is your blog page. So once they're on the blog page, they're going to read your post, and there'll be a call to action in that post. That call to action is going to lead them to a landing page. A landing page we'll touch on a little bit more detail later, but that's a place for you to collect the lead. This is important right here. This is where they're converting. This is where they go from an unknown user or someone that we don't know if they're interested to someone that we know is ready to speak to your sales reps. Another way that this can happen instead of traffic being driven from this promotion is it can come in through organic traffic, direct traffic, content marketing, and referral traffic. We'll get into that a little bit more, but it basically follows the same workflow. The traffic comes to the site and to the blog page, looks at the individual blog post, clicks on a call to action, goes to the landing page, and then from there there'll be a notification, a call from the rep, and they get added to the email list so we can continue marketing to them. Does that make sense, Harry? Do you have any questions there or comments?
No, it does make sense. Again, the devil's in the discipline, so that's I'll leave it at that. It's a whole nother conversation.
Agreed. One last piece to this. Every month you're going to send a newsletter out, and that newsletter is going to have 2 sections to it. One is going to say, in case you missed it, and the other is going to be blog highlights. In case you missed it is going to promote the Spotlight posts that were already promoted via email, social media, and ads. The other one, the blog highlights, are going to be your secondary posts, which are essentially net new content for the people that are not on the email list, that are on the email list. So that's your net new content. And again, that's just a second opportunity to drive traffic back to these landing pages. The main goal right now is we're driving traffic to the landing pages, providing a call to action, sending them to a page where we collect their information, and following up. That's your workflow. So since Harry said the devil's in the details, let's get into the details.
Yep, let's do it.
The first key to all this is this works, and not only does it work, but it's all about momentum. And this chart should explain that. This shows the impact that this exact campaign that we're explaining here had on a real customer's traffic. You can see where we started running the campaign and how over just a few months the traffic really grew. The spike that you're seeing there is September of 2015. At that point, the customer actually asked us to reallocate some of the content budget to a different project, so we had to cut back on doing the content marketing, and we stopped doing this campaign almost altogether. And you can see how the traffic just dropped off precipitously. So the lesson here is, like I said, this does work, and it is all about momentum and consistency. You have to keep it going. And so that's a cautionary tale to everyone that does want to try to embark on doing this campaign. You have to be in it for the long haul. When we went back to the client, we showed them this chart. That was in October, and we verified with them that September was actually the top month in terms of new web leads that they've ever had. So obviously they asked us to continue the campaign, but here we are in December, and the traffic is still recovering. So if you're going to do it, you have to keep it going. So like we talked about earlier, the website is it's the foundation of all of your digital marketing efforts. It's the hub of your content, and all of the inbound and outbound marketing tactics that you're using ultimately leads users back to your website. So it's really critical that your website is designed to be optimized for that kind of traffic. So I don't expect anyone to take a look at this and go out and fix their websites today. When you go and download this presentation, you can use it as a reference point. I'm just going to talk through some of the highlights, but this is the layout of a website that we would consider best practice in terms of driving people through a user journey, getting them to take action, and ultimately converting into a lead. So the first rule here is, obviously, you have to have a website. It has to be a fairly recent design too. This is important for credibility. You have to think about the user. They're going to be thinking, do I want to trust my IT environment to somebody that hasn't redesigned their website since like 2002? Also, it's about user experience. It's got to be easy for them to use, and it's got to be optimized for them to move through the user journey. So user experience is a hot new area of marketing, user experience design, or UX design we call it. And it's essentially about creating a website that's intuitive to use and leads the user through a journey that ends in them completing some sort of an action. That action can be an e-commerce transaction, or it can be filling out a form, which we would call a conversion in either case. So at the end of the day, you want your customers to come to your website, or your prospects to come to your website, but you want them to convert. The best way for someone,
yeah, is this, and I'm legitimately asking this question, but is this what they call a wireframe? I keep hearing that design term thrown around, and maybe some of the guys on the call have heard it. Is that what this is?
This is a wireframe, yep. And so in terms of designing a website, the way that you would do it is you would put together an information architecture. That information architecture is essentially the navigation that the website will follow, and how the how the content is structured in the website and the workflows of the user journey. Then you would move into a wireframe, which is what you're looking at. Think of the wireframe as like tent poles, and then think of the design, or high fidelity design, as the cloth of the tent that go over the tent poles. So this would be your HTML structure, and then we would use something called CSS to give it the look and feel of your brand and to match the high fidelity design.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. So anyway, UX design is like super hot right now, and because of that, it's super expensive to do. So the best way for someone that's not a user experience designer to do their own UX design is, I like to think in terms of the sales process. So what do you say in the beginning of your sales pitch? It's usually your primary value proposition, right? That would go here. And then once you've given them sort of your primary value proposition, you'll continue going through the sales cycle. You give them more information about the company, about your process, about your products and services, and differentiators, why you instead of a competitor. So that's your user journey. So that information should start here and go down towards the bottom. And then each one of these sections are what we would call a portal. So let's say, for example, you put your key services here, like VoIP, or disaster recovery as a service. You would just put a little bit of teaser text and an icon and a little button that says, learn more. And then they click that, and they would go to a detail page, and the detail page is where all the content of your website would exist. Also notice that the layout of this page, it's one long page. You might remember that, going back 5+ years, websites weren't laid out that way. There was a term that people used, above the fold. You have to keep the content above the fold. People don't like to scroll. That was the case back then, but people have been conditioned to scroll right now, and so best practice would really be to have one long scrolling page as opposed to multiple pages that are laid out horizontally, if you will. So it's super important that you have calls to action. So a call to action is it's explaining to the user what the next step is. There should always be a next step, and that's one of the big failures that I see with a lot of MSPs websites is They might have content, but they don't tell you what to do next. There's always got to be a next step, and it has to be clearly identified for the user. Another thing is not keeping your content fresh. You have to always have fresh content on here. So, for example, if you were to use if this were a slider, so a carousel or a slider we call it, where you have an image and it scrolls to the left or to the right and another image comes, that can be a completely different message. That should always be fresh with new stuff so that when people come back to your website, they're seeing new content all the time. The way to manage that is using what we call a CMS, or a content management system. So a CMS, you're probably familiar with WordPress. That's a CMS. It's a good one. It's a free one. I definitely would recommend it. There are others out there for different use cases. So another quick note about websites is don't be too copy heavy. This is a really common mistake. People just don't read that much copy. You're going to lose people. You want to be really concise. It's easy to be verbose, but it's really hard to be concise, so you need to put some effort into that.
Sean, what I would quickly add there is maybe it's a webinar 2016 about why I don't like working with companies run by engineers. And here's the problem. Most of the people in this webinar are engineers running companies. And you get into conversations with these guys, present company accepted, and there's too many words, man, too many words, and it carries over to the web pages, and it's fewer words is very, very hard.
It is hard.
It's very hard. Continue.
So some of your key takeaways here for your website is just make sure that your website design and your content is current. Design your website around your user journey, change content frequently, and use your CMS, and be sure to have calls to action everywhere. So given this advice that I just gave you, if you go back and look at your website and see that you're guilty of one of the sins that we just talked about there, you might consider updating your website as a first step. And here are some options for you, affordable options. So the first is you have to do it yourself. I recommend a company called Weebly and Yola because I think that they are the easiest to use for a business user like myself, for example. I don't do code. I would stay away from something like Squarespace unless you're familiar with coding and building sites. It's a little bit more complex. These platforms make it really simple for an average business user to build a customized website without knowing how to do code. So I definitely recommend it unless you have some budget. If you have some budget to spend on this, then I think the next best option would be, aside from a full-scale custom website, which we're talking, $3,000 to $5,000 minimum for a small site, you could do a WordPress theme. So you can go to a website called Theme Forest, and on Theme Forest you can pick a theme, which is basically the wireframe that we talked about. So your site's already built, and it just has to be customized with your branding and your content. However, doing a theme requires a little bit of coding. You have to import it into your CMS, most likely WordPress, and then you have to start adding content and images. Any kind of customization would require coding knowledge, so it's a little bit more of an advanced option, but it is very cost effective. I'd only recommend doing this by yourself if you're ready to spend some time learning or if you have some experience doing code. If not, but if you could carve out, say, $1,500 in budget, then I could recommend you go and you find a theme and hire an agency to customize the theme for you. So that's kind of a nice middle ground between doing it yourself and paying an agency for a custom site. Just remember that when you're choosing a theme, no matter which service you're using or which direction you go, try to find a theme that matches your template. This is a common mistake as well. Best practice would be to create your content and your information architecture first, map out exactly what you say and where you want the user to go, and then find a theme or do a design to match that content. Unfortunately, what most people do is they buy a theme, get it built in WordPress, and then they start plugging content in. And then what you have is, a very poor user experience that can be jarring and can really disrupt the user's flow. So you want to avoid that. So next step is the content marketing piece of this, and this is doing the blogging. So content marketing is using content from like white papers or blogs or videos and using it to attract and engage with prospects and customers. So the idea is the more content that you have that's relevant to your field of expertise, and the more people that engage with that content and read that content, share it, the easier that you can be found online in search engine results or people that are searching for the type of things that you do as a business. it's also the anchor point to a lot of different other marketing activity like email marketing and pay-per-click campaigns and social media. So like we said before, content is king. If you don't believe me, maybe you'll believe HubSpot. This is some data from HubSpot. They're a marketing automation platform that focuses on inbound, specifically content marketing. So they have about 7,000 customers, and this data comes directly from their platform on the customers that they have that are on there. So you can see what happens. The more website pages you have, the more monthly blog posts you're doing, the impact that it has on leads as well as traffic. This same report that I pulled this from states that companies that blog 15 or more times per month generate 5 times more traffic, and that B2B companies that blog even just 1 to 2 times per month generate 70% more leads than those that don't blog at all. So I think it's a really clear message. You need to get in the game. You need to do some content marketing. Even if you can only squeeze out 1 or 2 articles per month, you're better off doing that than doing nothing at all. But
Yep.
If you look at the chart here, you can see, ideally you'll start to see some growth at around 5 to 6 blog posts per month.
John, a quick question about curated content, and you probably know about this stuff better than I do, but I understand Google wants unique content, and Google will penalize you for copying content. And a lot of curated content, as I know the concept, it's kind of to copy it. Like, wow, that's a really cool article. I'll post the first 5 sentences of it and do a link off. It's a little bit lazy. It can be good because the article might truly be good, but very quickly, what do you know about curated content? What do you know about Google penalties, that kind of thing, just so people know to write unique?
Yeah, so we actually touched on this a little bit later in the presentation, but
okay.
But you're absolutely correct. Google can and will penalize people if they duplicate content in a systematic way. So I would recommend against that 100%. That doesn't mean that you can't curate content, and there's a couple different ways that you can approach that,
okay.
which we'll touch on.
Okay, cool.
So I just want to clarify a little bit something that was in the workflow. I want to talk about the different ways that you can drive traffic. So the reason that content drives traffic is because content is the key to being findable, as Harry was just kind of alluding to, also known as SEO or search engine optimization. So you don't need to worry about doing technical SEO or keywords or keyword density or anything like that. I'm sure technical SEO would cringe at me saying that, but really you just need to write. You just need to create content. You need to write about what you know, write so people find value, publish your content where your audience is going to see it and engage with it. Google's on record as saying that this is the #1 approach to sustainable SEO success. What they want is someone who has good content, and they have a number of indicators that tell them whether or not that content is good and whether or not it's unique, and if it is, that can position you higher up in the results. So that's organic traffic. Other ways to generate traffic are direct traffic, and that would be the case where maybe someone likes your blog, and so they just come back to it, and they do that through a bookmark, or as I'm sure all of you do with SMB Nation. You have a bookmark, you go check it daily, you read what Harry has to say. That's direct traffic. Then you have referral traffic. Referral traffic is someone linking back to your content. You can also consider that a backlink. So the idea is this is a huge indicator to Google that you have what they call domain authority. If someone is saying, hey, check out this awesome blog, and they link back to your site, that's them putting their reputation on the line, essentially for your content that you created. So that's an indicator to Google that you're putting out good content, and that also tells them the context of your content and where you belong in terms of search engine results. It's especially helpful if someone with an established domain authority links to you. So it's great if I link to one of your blogs. It's a lot better if Cisco does. The more domain authority the person linking back to you, the better off it is for you. And then another way to drive inbound traffic is paid ads like AdWords or social media display ads. The other way of driving traffic is outbound, in which case you're sending emails and newsletters and you're linking people back to your site. So you can note that the campaign that we put together here has both. It will generate, it really touches on all of these actually. So creating and publishing content. Writing can be intimidating. I recommend a book called The War of Art, not The Art of War, by Stephen Pressfield, for those of you that need a little bit of a push to start writing. It explains that the successful writer schedules time to write, the unsuccessful writer waits for inspiration. So you have to sit at your desk at a scheduled time every day or every week and you need to put the time in, and you need to get some words down on page. You can come back to it and edit later. Maybe some things you keep, maybe some things you scrap, but you have to do it. You have to get your time in. Your topics can come from whatever you're reading in the industry news, or things you encounter on the job, or questions that prospects have asked you. So for example, if you're talking to a customer about security one day, and they ask, what are some key things I need to know when securing my network to be HIPAA compliant? There's a post right there. You should go back and you should write that post that day while it's fresh in your mind. You can also reblog content from vendors, and that's what this is, what Harry was talking about. So what you don't want to do is just scrape content, copy and paste it, and put it on your own blog page. Google will find that, and they will penalize you at some point. What you can do, though, reblogging, is you can summarize the post and add your own spin to it. So maybe spend some time explaining why you thought that was a valuable post, or what you thought was interesting, why you want to share, what your takeaway was, or maybe your opinion on the subject, and then link back to that other article. That's also a good opportunity if it happens to be a vendor or a customer to work out some sort of a backlink strategy where, if you reblog for them, maybe they'll reblog for you. You have to be careful with that, though, because what you don't want to do is create a little network of backlinks and reblogging that looks like it was orchestrated and coordinated, because Google will penalize you for that too. So look, if it's organic, if you really thought it was a good blog post and you really have something to say about it, then go ahead and reblog it. But if you're doing it just because you want to build up a backlink network, you're not going to outsmart Google, and it's going to hurt you in the long run. You want to?
Well, Sean, guys, you're welcome to start with my amazing analytics blog. If you want to give me a Christmas gift. Okay, Sean, go ahead.
That might look coordinated. Okay, you want to publish your posts at the same day and the same time every week. It should be a regular feature. So if you're doing the spotlight post, publish it, say, every Tuesday, and then secondary, do every Thursday. You can experiment in the beginning with what days or what time, look at your analytics and see what's working the best. But once you figure out what your sweet spot is, you want to be consistent with that. If you haven't gotten the message yet, this whole thing is about being consistent. So find your sweet spot and stick with it. Also remember, I mentioned this before, you have to be in this for the long haul. This is going to take some traction. So don't give up in 3 months if you don't see leads flowing in like crazy. You have to keep going. It will work. It'll take a little bit of time, but it will work. There is some KPI that you can look to other than just leads or revenue generated that will let you know if you're going in the right direction. Some of those KPI are things like number of visitors, number of unique visitors, number of return visitors, average number of pages viewed, time spent on page, bounce rate. So bounce rate is someone that comes to your website and they look at your page and they realize it's not what they were looking for and they immediately leave. That's called a bounce. You want that percentage to be as low as possible. So those are some good KPI that you can get out of your CMS or using Google Analytics, which you load on a code snippet onto your website in your CMS, and then you can look at the analytics and see what's working, what's not working, and use that to inform your decision. You also want to make sure that when you're posting content, you want to make sure it's going out over social media, and again, it should be in a regular time. So people should know that every Friday you've got a featured post coming out, or whatever it ends up being. So to keep all of this organized, you want to use a content calendar. This is what a content calendar looks like. It's a spreadsheet. This is a real live content calendar that we use for a client. Just to go through it real quick, you have the title of the post. Is it a spotlight post or is it a secondary post? If it's spotlight, yes. If it's secondary, no. What month is it being published in? What's the due date of the draft? What's the actual publish date? How many words is the post going to be? A little bit of an abstract or a description of the article. Who's going to be writing it? And whether it's being posted over social media or not. This is probably basic enough that it'll work for you. There's a lot more that we actually do if you kept scrolling right, but I don't think any of that's super important for you guys. So social media. One of the biggest mistakes I see out there for small businesses of all kinds, let alone MSPs, is thinking that social media marketing in and of itself is a good marketing strategy. It's not. Social is a tactic. It should be really used as a publishing platform for your content. Now, you'll make posts that aren't necessarily about your content, and you'll interact with people, but that whole activity is really just built to, is meant to create a community and create engagement so that when you do put content out over your social network, they're kind of primed and ready to consume your content, and they're interested in engaging with you on that content. This is going to help drive traffic and SEO. There's a company out there called Search Metrics, and they do a report every year of what they think Google's top indicators are, because Google doesn't come right out and just give you that information. But you can interpret it pretty well. So in 2014, 7 out of the top indicators that Google used for search engine results were social indicators. Things like, are people sharing your content on social platforms? Are they commenting? Are they retweeting it? Are they favoriting it? This by itself is justification to do social media for those of you that aren't believers and think it's a waste of time. But you should also remember that social is a pull strategy, not a push strategy. So I think where a lot of people go wrong is, number one, they're not using it to publish their net new content, if they even have net new content. Number two is they're not using it as a way to drive traffic back to their site when they really should be whenever the opportunity is there. And then number three is all they're doing is pushing a message out instead of trying to engage with the community. People on social media have a really, really good way of sniffing out people that are being inauthentic or that have an agenda. So you have to go into this with the right intentions, but if you do it right, you build up a community, you engage with that community, they will consume your content, it will drive traffic back to your website, Google will recognize it, and you will start to rise in the search engine rankings. There's tools out there that you can use like Sprout Social or Hootsuite that are either cheap or free. That's going to help you publish to multiple platforms. It can even automate some of the process for you. I think that social media is really misunderstood, but if you use it right and you use it in this way, there's an extraordinary amount of value for your organization. So next up here is the email and the newsletter portion. So email marketing is sometimes thought of as an old school and ineffective marketing strategy, but it's still actually one of the top marketing channels used in B2B marketing. Some of the keys to successful email marketing are having an automation platform. So you have to have a platform that can enable you to easily pull up a template, customize an email, send an email, and then manage the campaign and view your analytics. I recommend one called MailChimp, you've probably heard of, or MakesBridge, which you probably haven't. What I like about MakesBridge is it allows you to do a little bit more in terms of building automated workflows than MailChimp does. It's pretty inexpensive. MailChimp's actually free up to a certain number of records. You could probably grow into MailChimp, start with the free account, and kind of grow up to the point where you need to make a decision whether you want to do the paid one or find a different platform. So they're both easy for a business user. You don't need to know a whole lot of code. A little bit more so with MailChimp, but it's still completely manageable for a business user to figure out. They also both have some really great resources online that can help you learn best practices and how to actually use their platform. You want to select a simple template, again, from ThemeForest, or the platform itself might have a template that you can choose. Or you could just Google email templates, HTML email templates, and it's pretty simple to take a template and copy and paste or upload the file, the HTML file, right into the platform, and then you can kind of customize your email from there. So your email itself needs to have a place for a banner that has your logo and your URL on it. You're going to want a place for a headline, copy. So the copy is teaser text. Again, it's just you want to get them a little bit interested in the article and then make them click to read the entire article back on your blog page. So let's see, your call to action button has to be super clear. Read more. They click that, they go to the landing page. In order to be compliant with the Canned Spam Act, you want to make sure you have a footer that's got your address and information in it, as well as an unsubscribe. The platform will manage all of that for you. It's really pretty easy, actually. So you'll be compliant as long as you're using the right platform, but just make sure that from the very beginning, the people that you are emailing, that you have on a list, are people that actually want to hear from you. There's something called sender reputation. So if you send lots of emails out, and let's say you've got a list of 1,000 people, that's not a lot. But if you send out 1,000 emails to 1,000 people and only 5% of them open your emails on a consistent basis, that's a red flag to the ISPs. This guy's probably spamming. And your sender reputation will decline, and therefore your deliverability rate, which is super important, you want to make sure the emails you're sending actually get into the inbox, will suffer. So you want to make sure that you stay above board. You want to groom your list pretty consistently. You also want to write a compelling subject line. When you're doing a cold call, for example, that first call is just about getting the meeting, at least if you're doing it right. You're not trying to sell anything. Same thing with the subject line. It's really just about getting an open. You want them to look in their inbox, see your subject line, and click to open the email. So you want to make it compelling, but you don't want to make it too vague. This is a sample email, again, a wireframe. And you can see all the elements that we just talked about. You can see this is a very simple layout. It's not copy heavy. There's no more than 150 words in here, usually less. And you've got a strong call to action at the bottom. There's your call to action button. Images increase click-throughs. You want to make sure you're using an image that is in some way correlating back to the content that you've got here. When you use an image in your email and they click through and they go to the blog post to finish reading it, that same image should be there. You want to create consistency. So this is a tip for any time you've got some sort of a workflow where somebody is consuming some content and then clicking to consume more content. So that could be clicking on an ad and going to a landing page. It can be reading an email and clicking and then going to a blog page. Doesn't matter. But the key thing there is that first touch point, like the ad or the email, is making a promise to the user. This is what you're going to get when you click. And then when they get there, you have to fulfill that promise. There has to be consistency. Consistency in message. So a lot of people don't do that. And when they don't do that, that's when you get a really high bounce rate on your website. You're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. So just make sure that you make a promise with your teaser text or with your ad, and you fulfill that promise. A lot of people, what I'll see is, for example, on the telecom side of things, there's something called the iAgent network where you can pay to have an email go out to like 50,000 users. I see a lot of people that use the iAgent network either not have a call to action in their email, so that's basically that communication dead ends right there in the inbox, or if they do have a call to action, it just dumps the user back onto the home page. That's useless. You made a promise in that email, and then you're dumping them on the home page and hoping that they find that content. That's not helpful. You need to create continuity for the user. This is an example of a newsletter layout. So, for example, you might want to have two sections like this. You could post 3 different blog posts from in case you missed it. So these would be your spotlight posts. And then you might have a second section that's your blog highlights that looks exactly the same, or here it is in a different format. But the important part is that you've got the ability to go in here and put in your teaser text, your image, and your call to action button, and you can aggregate the different touch points that you had throughout the month, just like the plan calls for. You've got 2 sections, in case you missed it, and blog highlights. You've also got the opportunity, you could include some links. So we talked about curating content. Sometimes when we do newsletters for a customer, we'll put a little set of links at the bottom, links that we thought were interesting or links you might like. And it just directs people right back to the page. It doesn't really benefit you in terms of traffic, but it does benefit you in terms of positioning. So you can use other people's content to create a context so people understand where you fit into the marketplace and what your position is. All right. Landing page. We talked about landing page over and over. This is a critical point in the workflow because it's where the conversion happens. So it's a very simple single web page. That's all it is. There is no navigation. There's nowhere for them to go. You don't want to distract them with a crazy design or allow them to click anywhere off of that page. There's only 2 ways to leave that page. One is to fill out the form and submit it, or 2 is to close the window, period. The form should be simple, 5 fields or less. The less friction that you create for them to convert, the better off you're going to be. You can create a landing page in your CMS the same way that you would create a new page for your website, for example, a content page or a blog page. You can also use templates for landing pages and upload them into your CMS, or you could do it through a platform like Ion Interactive that specializes in doing just landing pages. Also, some marketing automation platforms have landing page functionality built into them. I think MakesBridge does. I know Acton does, for example. Here's a template of the landing page right here. You notice there's no navigation. There's nowhere for them to go. There's a tiny bit of copy that explains the main value proposition. There's a form. There's the graphic. That graphic should be consistent with whatever graphic was on the touch point that send them to the landing page. So if it was an email, that's the graphic from the email. If it was an ad, it should look like the graphic that's in the ad. A little bit of substantiation, content that substantiates why they should take you up on this offer, for example, or why they should ask to speak to a sales rep. you can do a landing page in a couple different ways. This is a long form landing page, but you could actually just do this top content box right here, where you have just a little bit of copy and a form. You don't actually need all of this. There's different use cases for both, but this is built to convert, and that's the goal, is to convert. All right, so let's talk about lead workflow. So now somebody has gone and they have filled out your form. And once they fill out that form, they're what we call an MQL, or marketing qualified lead. They submit that form, and that should trigger a workflow that will send at least a notification by email to, say, a sales manager or a sales rep. The best case scenario, though, is that you use a bunch of platforms that are part of the same ecosystem, and so you could create an integration between your landing page form and your CRM system, or your PSA even. So the idea there would be somebody fills out the form, that data gets pushed right into your CRM or your PSA and creates a notification for the rep to then go in and make contact with that individual. It's super important that if you do get a lead, somebody follows up immediately. There's a lot of data that shows that if you if you wait 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours, 2 days, the longer you wait, the less likely that lead is to end up converting in the end. So you want to have your sales reps be completely aware of this campaign that you're running. They should also have access to your content calendar so they know what you're talking about on any given week or with any given post. And they should be prepared to follow up with that lead immediately.
Yep, speed to lead.
There you go. So I'm just going to recap this campaign again, given all that we just learned. There's 2 different ways that people are going to end up on your website or on your blog page. There's this, which is your inbound efforts, organic traffic, direct traffic, content marketing, and referral traffic. Or your outbound efforts. In this case, it's your email marketing, your social media marketing, your paid ads, and your monthly newsletter. All traffic leads through a user journey, which is built into the design of your website and leverages content to get people to move through the different stages of the sales cycle until they get to your content. From the content, there's a call to action. The call to action sends them to a landing page. From the landing page, there's only 2 ways to go. One is they fill out the form, in which case there's a CRM notification, a call from the rep, and this is critical, we add them to the email list. So now that we have a known MQL in the funnel, we move them to that email list. So if you don't convert them, they'll continue getting these weekly emails. If you do convert them, they'll still get those weekly emails. And the nice thing about that is it positions you to stay in touch, stay top of mind. It frames the relationship, and it reminds them of products and services that you offer that maybe they haven't purchased. So this touch point and this touch point is pretty critical to long-term growth and sustainability of your customer base. So this right here is a cost comparison of, we called this enterprise marketing on an SMB budget. So you could see kind of the comparison of if you were in an enterprise, if you're in a large business and you were trying to effectively create this kind of a campaign, this is what it would cost you. You need a UX designer, a production designer, a front-end developer to do the HTML and the CSS. You might need a programmer to help you manage your content marketing, your CMS, customize your CMS. Automation platform subscription can be $1,000 a month for something like HubSpot or Marketo. You'll need a content and a copywriter and a marketing manager. These are not really the type of things that are, how do I want to say this? It's rare to find a single resource that can do all of this. So if you went out and you hired a marketing person, a single marketing person, and told them to create this kind of a campaign on their own, they would still have to engage with these kind of resources on an outsourced basis. They might be able to do 1 or 2 of these things. They might be able to do the content and copywriting and the marketing manager position, which is building the touch points in the automation platform, sending it, managing lists, things like that. But it's rare to find someone that can do all of this. So what we've done is just kind of shown you a shortcut that you can recreate this kind of a campaign on your own much cheaper. And I think it's reasonable for you to do. Obviously we went through this very fast, and there's a lot of moving pieces to it, and there's a lot of best practices to it, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to maybe do more of these in the future where we can dive in more detail and go through how to actually do this. But I think what we've put together here is an actionable plan. And but here's the thing: you can do it, but most people don't do it, and that's why we exist as intuitive marketing. So we're here to try to support you guys through this. We don't mind sharing our knowledge. You can feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to tell you our thoughts. We also offer a free 5-point marketing audit to kind of walk through your current marketing situation and make some recommendations for you and maybe point you in the right direction if you're going to try and do it yourself. I think what we've seen so far with our customers that try to do it themselves, despite our efforts to try to help them, is they usually end up coming back to us. But there are a number of them that manage to get this off the ground and manage it themselves, and we're happy to see that. So we'll send an email out tomorrow that'll have a recording of this presentation, and we'll also include a copy of the slide deck for reference. And we wish you luck in trying to build this out and manage it yourself.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this was some real content, so to speak, pun intended. So, folks, seriously, keep an eye out for the follow-up email. I guess what I would lay on top of this is that, Sean, to your point earlier, this 10-day period is kind of that reflective period. I mean, we're going through it over here at SMB Nation, madly coming up with some new themes for 2016. Folks, my analytics blog, the analytics blog is kind of a hint of some of the conversations we're going to try to inspire in the community. So this is a damn good time to kind of take this to heart, hit Sean back with some follow-up questions, and then he can also follow up with you on a training session or some other vehicle to kind of get you engaged. With that said, wishing everybody a happy holiday, I guess holidays, with New Year's coming up, and all the various forms that we celebrate the holidays in. So have a good one, and we'll look forward to seeing you all re-energized, quite frankly, January 4th, a Monday, after the long New Year's weekend. Sean, thank you so much. We'll talk to you on the flip side, folks. Have a great holiday season.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, everyone.